Hello and welcome back to the channel. We have recently completed a 2-month road trip all around New Zealand. We have just completed a 2-month road trip around New Zealand. So we have a few tips to share.
We do.
You could call us experts.
And if you are thinking of traveling New Zealand and you're not really sure what to do, where to stay, what these tips are, stay watching because we promise that they'll come in handy.
And stay watching all the way to the end of the video. Every point is as important as the other one.
Correct.
So let's jump into it. Tip number 1 is all around how to plan your trip to New Zealand. It can be quite overwhelming planning a trip to New Zealand. There are so many different activities to do and there really is something for everyone. So we love adventures and outdoor activities, including hiking, apparently zip lining now, but it's really important, I think, to have that discovery phase and to, if you're a solo traveler, a couple, a group, really finding out what's important to you and then basing your planning and your research all on those needs. We created a Google Doc and we found that really helpful. You can use Excel, you can write it down on paper, but actually having that written down we found really helpful.
Yeah, the other thing that we also used was Google Maps itself. So when we would find out something that was really cool to do, we'd actually go and find the location and map it out on the map. And that way you can actually see a bit of a route. You end up creating a route that you can actually take, which was really, really helpful too.
Yes, good point. You can create lists in Google Maps and then save it to the list, which is really helpful. And you can both add to the same list, which is pretty cool. So yeah, we started in Christchurch and went all the way down to the Catlins, around to Queenstown and Wanaka. We absolutely loved Queenstown and Wanaka, so we wish we had a few more days there. So if you are planning a trip and you love hiking and nightlife and all the really fun outdoor stuff and the mountains, make sure you have enough time. We wish we could have made it to Mount Cook as well.
Yeah.
So make sure you look that one up. And then also the North Island. I wasn't expecting to love it so much, but if you are into activities, nature and culture, then it is just absolutely amazing on the North Island. So make sure you allow enough time for the North Island as well.
Yeah, and it's also important to remember that what other people say is amazing, what other people love might also not be something that you love. So for example, we'd heard all about the Catlins, which is at the south of the South Island, and it was gorgeous. The waterfalls were lovely, but it was quite underwhelming compared to, say, Queenstown, Wanaka, those sorts of places. So if we could do our time again, we would definitely spend some more time in the areas that we loved and not gone to the places that just because everyone else says that they're amazing to go there. So yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And if you're not aware, you have to get a ferry from the South North Island. Make sure you book that in advance because it sells out. Yeah, when you are doing your planning phase, any activity which you like the look of, it's probably best to book in advance, especially if you're going during peak season, which has the opposite seasons to the Northern Hemisphere. So yeah, just to be aware of that.
Yeah, that includes anything from ferries from the south to the North Island, tours, especially around Milford Sound and massive attractions like that. Yeah, anything that you think will probably sell out, probably already has, so do it super early.
But yeah, the planning phase should be very exciting, so best of luck with your planning. Okay, so tip number 2 really is to choose your vehicle wisely. So we went to New Zealand from March until May, which it gets pretty cold in New Zealand, and we did not realise that, like how cold it got. And we initially rented a sleeper van, which is the cheapest, most budget-friendly option, which are actually really, really good if you're doing like a 1-week, 2-week trip and it's warm outside. I think that'd be amazing, wouldn't they?
Yeah, it really would be. It's a very, very basic van where you fold down the bed at nighttime and then you fold it up in the morning to be able to keep all your stuff and have access to everything. So it's very compact and very small. But yeah, for a week it would have been great. But as time went on, we realized we probably needed more for 8 weeks.
Yeah. So that was Todd. So we upgraded to Howard, and the high top hires was amazing. But you don't have to get a camper van to travel around New Zealand. We actually met people on the road who rented a car and had a tent. We saw quite a few people do that. So you could just rent a car and buy a tent or bring one with you. That's a much more affordable way to do it.
But you just need to bear in mind the weather. Even though we were in autumn and we got there and the days were 20, 21 degrees, at night you're talking 3 or 4 degrees in some places. So it does get really chilly. So just keep that in mind when you're booking.
And you can also do a hop-on, hop-off bus, which I've known people to do, and they've really enjoyed that. I think that's great if you don't want to plan anything, it's all kind of done for you. That's a really easy option, especially if you're a solo traveler or a couple or group. But yeah, I think that would be a great option if you don't want to plan anything.
Okay, so tip number 3 is follow and use the weather apps. So I can't even explain how many times those weather apps came in really handy. They're crazy accurate over in New Zealand as well. And also remember to be dynamic when it comes to the weather. If we stopped our plans based on the rain when we were in New Zealand, we wouldn't have done anything.
No.
So you have to get a rain jacket on and you just still have to get out there. Milford Sound's a really good example. We were kind of dreading that morning because it was pouring, but how magical was it once we got out onto the water? So it really can get very, very rainy over there, but don't let it change your plans. Still get out there and get exploring, but also remember that the rain can get quite dangerous. So if there are warnings and things like that on the weather apps, just listen to those and make sure that you do the right thing and keep safe.
Yeah, I think, yeah, especially on the other end of the scale, like we were caught in a subtropical storm on the Coromandel. So that encouraged us to leave. So don't just stay somewhere, especially if a storm's coming. But on the other hand, if there's a bit of rain, just
get on with it.
Just get stuck in. It's amazing. As Rach said, Milford Sound was one of the best things we've ever done, and it was torrential rain, but the waterfalls were just so powerful because there was so much water. But yeah, you have a great time either way, but just be careful of those storms because New Zealand can be quite dangerous if the weather turns bad. It's just something to bear in mind if you're planning a trip there. Okay, on the topic of apps, this is our tip number 4, and it's to download an app called CamperMate before going to New Zealand. CamperMate is brilliant, especially if you're camping. I think the clue's in the title, but it gives you all the campsites in a location, as well as some other really useful tips and tricks when you are camping on where to find water or public toilets, stuff like that. So it can be really, really helpful. Or even if you're just driving around New Zealand, I think it would be quite helpful to know these things because it has some reviews which Google doesn't have and some places that Google doesn't have. So between the two, it's super helpful. Campsites can sell out. We were very lucky we never had that, but in peak season, I'd imagine some of the best campsites would sell out. There are freedom camps, and that's where CamperMate's great, but typically you're looking to spend between $30 and $40 a night, depending on what the campsite is. It also gives you low-cost campgrounds, which are more like $10 to $20, and we quite like those.
Yeah, it's really great because it actually has the 3 tiers. It has your freedom camping, your low-cost camping, and what they called your paid camping. So that's more the high-end stuff. But yeah, it has all 3, which is really, really helpful. They're all color graded. So yeah, you can literally just scroll out on the map, check where your nearest campground is, and then go.
Okay, so tip number 5, on the topic of data and downloading apps, SIM cards. So Rach actually found a really good deal to buy a SIM card before we went to New Zealand. So we got a really good deal on that actually. I'll put a link to it below. Yeah, we actually had a New Zealand SIM card where we had a New Zealand number, which actually came in handy when you're checking in or if you're renting a car, for example. Sometimes they're going to ask you for a phone number, so it's super useful to have. However, I have recently discovered eSIMs, which have changed the game. After New Zealand, we're in Europe now. So eSIMs, you can purchase them through an app. We use Airlo. I'll put a link in the description. If you sign up through that link, I believe it's a referral link, which is fantastic. So we use Airlo, and it allows you to purchase data in chunks, and you can use that either just in New Zealand. You can buy a package for New Zealand. You can buy around the world package. You can buy a Europe package. I find it amazing because you don't have to buy SIM cards. We went to Ireland. It gives you the carriers who they are partnered with. You can select that carrier and you can access data straight away. There's no activating the SIM. Well, there's a process when you first do it, but then when you go to different countries, it's so easy to change. So big tip. That's probably one of my favorite tips. So make sure you make a note of that, and it's something to consider because you're going to use Google Maps, especially if you're driving around. Instagram, Facebook, Google for reviews. So yeah, we love eSIMs.
Okay, so tip number 6 is to pack light. I'm very guilty of not doing this, and
really?
And in New Zealand was kind of no different. I did a lot better than I have done previously, but I still struggled a little bit and just took too much stuff. honestly, you need a lot less than what you think, but some essentials that you will need are a rain jacket. As we mentioned, the weather can get a little bit hairy, but if you have a good rain jacket, it's nothing to worry about. Also, some sort of puffer jacket or hoodie or something, because when we got over there, George didn't have that and you were freezing.
Yeah, I'm on the other end of the scale, like very minimalist. I don't even own a hoodie, but when I bought a rain jacket and puffer, but yeah, a really thick Patagonia hoodie I picked up in Queenstown because it was cold. Yeah. And we were in that sleeper van, so it was even colder. So yeah, I think research what seasons you're going, but the weather can change very quickly in New Zealand. So I think a rain jacket is essential pretty much all year round.
Yeah.
Rachel's from New Zealand. I think a warm layer is really important as well. But packing as light as possible is just always the way to go. And because we're in a camper van, we had mostly soft bags, so they could pack down and you could put them in the camper rather than like hard shell suitcases would be a bit trickier. Kathmandu has some awesome bags, not sponsored, we just love the brand, and they have some great convertible bags where they're a backpack and a rolly bag, so it's the best of both worlds. New Zealand has every shop possible as well, so if you do need to pick anything up on the road, you can do so, like a Patagonia hoodie or something like that. Okay, so moving on to tip number 7, and it's just to prepare you for the roads in New Zealand.
Or should you say the drivers?
And the drivers. Yeah, we noticed, especially in the South Island, drivers do like to drive quite close to you. So I would recommend pulling over and letting the cars go past pretty quickly when they're behind you. They do have overtaking lanes in New Zealand, quite a lot of them, because quite a lot of the roads are single track roads, especially in the South Island. And that leads on to planning your drive. So if something says an hour, it's probably going to take you an hour and a half, 2 hours, because you can't go the speed limit in a camper van or rental car or in any car actually. So yeah, just something to bear in mind. The roads can be slightly dangerous. We saw landslides on the side of the road from a storm as well. So yeah, it's just something to bear in mind with the roads, and yeah, don't push it or go too fast or push the limits just because you want to get to the next thing. And yeah, just drive safe.
Okay, so tip number 8 is joining Facebook groups related to the place where you're going, or just in New Zealand in general. I was addicted to this for a few months before we left, and I have to say this is where we got a lot of the good recommendations and some of the really special places that we ended up going. Take everything with a pinch of salt. Some things that people love might not be as interesting to you, and that's okay, but you can really find out a lot about other hidden gems, some other places where locals might know about that's not really known to the public. So yeah, it can be really, really helpful to connect with others, ask lots of questions in these groups as well, but also get some really good tips. So this was probably my favorite tip because we got a lot of our recommendations from Facebook. And
a lot of gossip as well. So if you like reading threads and forums, it can be an entertaining place. But yeah, it's a really good place to get what's happening in New Zealand at that time. Like if there's something going on with the ferries, you'll hear about it through the groups. So yeah, that was all Rach as well. Now I'm into groups as well. It's really fascinating. If you're planning on doing a big lap of Australia as well, join the groups. They are entertaining, to say the least, and knowledgeable.
Correct.
Bit of both. But yeah, take it with a pinch of salt. Okay, so tip number 9 is to factor in the cost of living in New Zealand, which is very high. We didn't realise how much it had increased. So
very expensive. Yeah,
supermarket food and shops are very expensive. We mainly shopped at Countdown, Pack and Save, and New World. New World have the best sweets. But they're the 3 big supermarkets, I believe. But yeah, a shop, if you can, shop in bulk and do that, you know, once a week. We had a very small van, so we could only shop every few days, but bulk buying is the best way to go. And
definitely if you can get your fruit and vegetables from a fruit and veg shop or even the local farmers, there are a lot of stalls on the sides of the roads that are attached to orchards and things like that where you can get your fresh fruit and fresh veg. And 1, I mean, it's always going to taste better directly from the farmer and you're supporting them. And 2, it is so much cheaper. We got 3 full bags of fruit for 11 New Zealand dollars, which was about 8 Australian dollars. So super cheap, and it's really nice to know that you're contributing directly to the farmer as well.
Bonus tip, make sure you carry cash so you can buy some nice fruit and veg on the side of the road. Okay, so that wraps up our tips. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. We have a whole playlist from our New Zealand travels, which will be linked somewhere in this video, so make sure you go back and watch those videos. We are now in Europe, so yeah, subscribe to follow our Europe series, and we will see you in the next one.
See you there.